Hello, everyone. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Today is Future Friday, and to move to end out the week with the same theme that I started from the beginning, we are talking about growth, or rather overgrowth. Some of it uncontrollable, some of it out of our control, maybe even chaotic. But for Future Friday, how do we incorporate that into our games, into our thinking, when it comes to the far future? So, unlike medieval worlds where we can think of overgrowth, such as maybe jungles or swamps or forests or something, or even if we go arcane with giant plants or what have you, with science fiction, the future, and technology, the one thing we can add to it that makes it both exciting and quite a bit horrible is to have uncontrolled growth and then to have a purpose behind it, an actual alien or unknown or unrecognizable purpose as to why something is growing. And then we also have different vectors as to overgrowth and how we can use that in the game. I think Vince, what's going on? Fat Ninja DM, what's going on, guys, man? Thanks for joining me. And I guess the not last thing, but not only could we have different vectors, but I can also see out of control alien growths as being something that can also be a backdrop or a tension generator for a bigger plot. Okay, so first of all, let's think of vectors and what do I mean by different vectors of growth. Okay, so let's take the alien plant idea, right? You've got yourself your crew, your scientists, your explorers, your cargo haulers, your miners, whatever. They go out, they find a piece of rock, they find a small plant, they land on an alien world, they're colonists, they find something that they haven't seen before, they bring it back. It's usually really tiny, might even be microscopic. Somehow it's exposed to element X, air quotes, like it could be exposed to electricity or radiation or someone's biological function. It might be close to humanity or something, and then all of a sudden it grows out of control. Someone walks away or someone sticks it with a laser scalpel or something, and then all of a sudden, like, it starts to grow. Maybe it expands like 10 times its size and grabs someone's throat or their hand or slaps onto their face, and then hilarity ensues, right? So a very classic alien. We don't know what it is. Maybe its only function is a biological function that is to spread and grow, basically life itself, right? It has no other purpose but to grow, to propagate its own life. I believe there's a movie called Life that I hadn't seen, but that was basically about that. The Blob is another version of that. The alien creature from Aliens is like that. Vince says, sounds like this one Voyager episode where there was a growing virus which got so big that you could actually stab it with a knife while it was floating around. Absolutely. Like, so if you, I don't want to say it's simple, but if you want to create the idea of something that not only is it attacking you, but it is getting bigger and spreading further as long as it exists. Absolutely, you can use something like that. And then game wise, mechanically, you could have a thing. Yeah, Dead Man, a Storyteller says the Thing. Of course, right? All you have to do is just add in just a little. If you don't want to go with the Blob, right, which is just rather famous movie, a cult classic where it's basically like a black pudding type of thing. If you go with like the movie The Thing, you add in a little bit. Oh, are we about to say it again? Mimic, right? Have something where it kills its host and takes it over. It duplicates what it looks like. It's able to become chameleonized or something. It rides inside of hosts so that it could spread somewhere else. And one of the crew members opens up his mouth and starts vomiting out this acidic black goo or something. It starts to spread around. And mechanically, you can have something where every round it doesn't die, it just gets bigger or better, or like another one is spawned or something, or roll a die on a table, get that D4 out, and then boom, here comes another one as it like separates or whatever. Vince said I had the concept of spaceship viruses for Astrocitas. There I go. It's like my 42nd way of pronouncing it. I even have enemies that can infect the ship and force it to produce copies of itself while draining the ship. And that's the real, I think the real danger of alien overgrowths versus like modern day or even fantasy overgrowth is that with an alien overgrowth, it's the invasion of the body snatchers thing, right? Not only is this thing like harming you, but it is duplicating something that you have. It's taking over. It is replacing something else. It's, crushing a car and then making itself into a car, Transformers style or something. I don't know. But there's some kind of alien purpose behind. Now, it doesn't necessarily, now when I say alien, I mean a purpose that you don't know of. For example, I actually decided to do a tiny bit of research, which I very rarely do. There's something called von Neumann machines or von Neumann concept when it comes to nanotechnology. So instead of like a biological growth, maybe from a planet or something, this might be purposefully created and as a nanotechnology. And their definition, as I did my little Google foo, a von Neumann probe is a spacecraft capable of replicating itself. The concept is named after Hungarian-American mathematician and physicist John von Neumann, who rigorously studied the concept of self-replicating machines that he called universal assemblers, and which are often referred to as von Neumann machines. So the purpose of, and the scary part of von Neumann machines, especially in like eclipse phase, is the fact that someone designed something that is able to replicate itself perfectly. So you have one, I'm just making like one cell or one molecule or one complex form of nanotechnology, and it's able to use materials around it to replicate itself and make two. The point is, what purpose does it have? Is that purpose necessary now than before? How do you stop it, and how do you reprogram it or turn it off? Vince said there could be fields of them flying dormant in space, looking like nebulas or small asteroids, and affect the ship when it comes too close. Von Neumann, I mentioned this one of my visits before. Yeah, von Neumann's. Yeah. RP says, to stick with the plant theme of yesterday, there's also Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah, it needs to be fed just a little bit more. Just get just a little bit more blood, and just use the neighbor. Just bring the neighbor over. I'll handle everything else. So having something that grows out of control, especially for player characters, they're going to really quickly try to find something that can stop it, whether it's like fire or cold or electricity, dumping it out into space, explosives. They're absolutely going to want to escape the space station and blow it up with some local explosives or something like that, unless that's a method for it to expand and it needs something else. Dead Man and Storyteller says self-replicating nanoswarms are even worse, femtoswarms. And the real horror, because I'm going to go off into other vectors here and talk about other vectors. One of the big horrors about, especially with nanotechnology, bacterial infections, viral infections, is being infected but not being able to see it, or knowing it exists and knowing like you're breathing it in or it's in your skin or something like that, but you can't stab it, you can't shoot it. I think that's one of the big fears, and actually in some ways the most complicated part too when using it for role-playing games, because unlike the common cold or getting the flu or disease and you make a con roll, nanotechnology has a motivation behind a purpose. Like, it wants to infect you, it is trying to infect you, as opposed to viral or bacterial things, which are happenstance in a way. And I'm being very generalized there. And how to handle that in a role-playing game. Vince says there's also the concept of a retrovirus, which tries to transform the PCs or the ship into something else. Could also be programmed. Maybe this is something like a form of backup clone of someone made. Yeah, so coming up with why it exists is a great purpose. Like, what if an alien race, this is how they explore the universe, right? They all, instead of sending giant galaxy class ships from place to place, they can send smaller packets of biological and technological information, basically held in like viral, like femtoswarms essentially, and just spread them across the universe. If they impact something, it just grows right there. It doesn't matter where it goes. Spread it all around the universe. It lands on a planet. Someone goes to involve themselves with it or whatever. They grab it, and then all of a sudden now it's able to grow and propagate itself. And that could be a way for an alien race to expand itself throughout the universe, especially if their universe is, their sun is dying, or their little galaxy is going out and going nova, and they say, listen, we got to get out of here. What's the cost effect analysis, right? Small packet, big effect. And then it could be trying to take over the biological needs and not understand maybe humanity is another sentient race. They're just trying to survive and grow or something. So that's also the big misunderstanding, is a big concept too for science fiction. RP Gamer says, and it's basically using the PCs and the ship as material to build clones. And it says, yeah, like the replicants from Stargate, as Vince says. So yeah, it could be that the aliens could be intelligent and might not even be violent, but their method of existing could be violent, right? Like, it could, unfortunately, it could be taking over. Maybe it starts snatching pieces from the spaceship, or there's a hostile alien world, and this nanotechnology is starting to disassemble part of the habitat, but it's only doing it to build or construct something for itself, just so it could communicate with humanity, and we may not know why it's doing it. We also have the concept of other vectors. So let me get, because I've mentioned it too many times. Other vectors could be, this could spread in different ways. So for example, of course, spreading it through breathing it in, but what if it is spread through data transmission? So this nanotech, this overgrowth is really just a program. And going back to Eclipse phase, they have something called a basilisk hack, where if you look at something, you open up a computer screen, you start looking at the data literally hacks into your brain, making you act in a different way. It could literally be a hack where it goes into digital systems and corrupt digital systems to propagate the program to maybe build something else. So if you have nano fabricators, this program could infect the system to start building something else, maybe something alien, or sending a signal to build something else at another habitat. And maybe it's on your spaceship, and you have to cut off your communications because your ship is being told to communicate to send out this this virus, literally digital programming virus, which will then go to maybe a large habitat of 1.5 million people in a spindle around Mars or something, and their replicating nanofabs will start printing out like war machines or biological things and such. Yeah, RP Gamer says, I'm sorry, Vincent says the alien races use a virus to transform other life forms into clones of themselves, maybe even with genetic memory, which is exactly what I'm thinking, genetic memory. So one NPC could permanently transform into one of them. Like an RP gamer's like, ooh, like a futuristic doppelganger. And that's absolutely possible, right? Vince says, I had something similar in Numenera. RP gamer, it was a machine. It tried to repair everything that's damaged, even biological life, which comes back to motivations, right? The reason it exists may be violent to us and the PCs and what we want to do, but its purpose may not be evil in intent. It could be a modification or a misunderstanding of what its intention is to do, or it could be something outdated. Maybe 5,000 years ago, what it's trying to do is perfectly acceptable, but today, in this particular part of the universe, it's destructive. Also, so sometimes things can be corrupted. So maybe it was perfectly serviceable for these aliens to build their cities using a nanofab architecture and whatnot. But now when the humans get there, it's just like overgrowing and using their own human bodies to build into the architecture and ripping them apart or something. Oh yeah, Vince says, so when he found wounded human, he would use machines as implants to restore its functions again. RP Gamer says it sounds awesome, but because Vince mentioned this idea actually on the air just a little bit, and the idea of like having something that's trying to repair and heal things it comes in contact with, but overdoing it, taking it too far. Dead Man and Storyteller, like the Friday the 13th movie in the future, they accidentally tried to repair Jason toward the middle or the end, right? So it could be that maybe rebuilding something, maybe of an alien piece of technology, might take something and take it out of control. And so, of course, with computer viruses, like, using something like Cyberpunk Shadowrun with a computer virus that's growing out of control, that's taking over systems also by itself, can be a backdrop to the world. For example, the virus may know the PCs are after it, so it starts doing things like changing streetlights or changing data from the authorities, making the PCs look like the enemy, like they're criminals, and the computer program just wants to live. Maybe it's an AI system or something, and the PCs are running around trying to shut systems down to get it under control, but no one believes the PCs. It's just part of the system. It's never been corrupted before. What are you running around for? Trying to convince us you're the actual bad guys or something. Yeah, it's just that. Also with overgrown and overgrowth type of things, especially with this biological growth, it may be trying to terraform a particular location, say a planet, or growing inside of a habitat and trying to terraform it into something. Maybe it's used to breathing methane gases or heavy nitrogen gases, and we can't survive in its area. So it's trying to terraform and change the environment, making it harder maybe for us to breathe, or the gravity changes, the temperatures could be changing, radiation could be a hazard or something. And so that could also be this ticking time bomb of not being able to breathe, not being able to see, and that kind of thing. RP Gamer says, I was thinking of a biological growth that has been sent into space. It reaches a planet and begins destroying it, but really its job was to terraform a new home planet for this alien race. And absolutely, right? We've seen a number of movies that way. If you think about it, the Man of Steel movie was that way with General Zod, and they had their terraforming machine. But if you want to have something that is unknown, maybe this thing lands and it starts sending out these probes to begin terraforming. And in the beginning, it might not be as harsh. So we're just looking at plants, and we're getting, the PCs are just getting little samples. But over time, it's because it's spreading exponentially. It could be something that starts to like physically, like you could physically see this moving and spreading, and maybe it needs some biological fuel, which the PCs might be if they are living beings, and it needs that fuel. It needs that genetic material, base genetic material to break apart to use for its own system. Vince says, I personally love biological tech. Yeah, maybe something that looks like a virus is simply a normal way for the alien race to create their tech. Zerg have a creep which they use as food and to grow buildings. Yeah, anything biotech is awesome, where you just see like instead of bolts and rivets, you see what looks like maybe the interior of a starship looks like ribs that grow through it. Absolutely. H.R. Geiger's styled artwork where things have curves and it always makes it seem like it's got a sheen to it, some kind of weird fluid on, like as if you could touch it and you feel something, some kind of residue on your hands or whatnot, or even something that's dead and desiccated, but it feels like at one point it was alive and breathing and moving. I really love those kind of things. Symbiotes from Star Trek, the Trill, yeah, Gremlins, the Trill, of anything that like wants to grow out of control. And as you talking about using it as a backdrop, it could be that the player characters know this thing's going out of control, but they have to leave to go somewhere else to find a way to solve what it is that they're impacting. Yeah, it could be like the PCs they're on their own spaceship and it's growing out of control in the cargo hold, and it wants to take over the engine room because it can absorb radiation or heat from there, and it wants to go into the cafeteria, down the halls, and through the HVAC system and whatnot. And so the tension could be that there's no place to run when it starts to overgrow, and that in itself could be the adventure. Like, okay, we need to run through the habitat to gather all these supplies. Hey, you're the hacker. We need you to do this. Hey, you're the scientist. We need you to gather these materials. I'm the gunman. I'll start blasting it and holding it off while we go assemble this hodgepodge of materials to cure slash prevent slash divert this overgrowth. Also, the tail end of the overgrowth might be that this might be a connection with humanity, or another big surprise. Maybe it has something to do with us from the future, or an alien or lost colony from humanity that left the solar system, and now we've contacted them again, but we didn't realize it was them. It could be like the Borg, where we're going to bring you into the community, whether you like it or not. You got to be one with the Borg, and that those that are absorbed into the hive mind, once they're in the hive mind, they're like, this makes a lot of sense. It does make sense to be part of the Borg. It could be that we're scared because not only is it invasive, but it might actually be like good for people, and we just don't like it. RP Gamer says the symbiotes from Spider-Man. Yeah, Venom. That symbiote. They provide the PCs with power, but really they're slowly gaining control of the host and using them to replicate and infect others. Vincent says, or those weird aliens might actually be just biological weapons, tools, or vehicles we just don't know how to use yet. And what a great way to instill horror into a game, because I think when something grows out of control, there's quite a bit of horror, especially like if it's one of those things where you don't want it to touch you, you don't want it to infect you. But imagine it does infect the player characters, like ciphers from Numenera or something, right? It's like, hey, these things can grow and they give us power, but little by little you start losing just a little bit of yourself. It's like it is the full circle of like the future tech of beings from the lower planes, like demonic infection. Like, yeah, here's an enhancement, here's a power, here's something that makes you feel good. All I need is just a little bit more from you. I just need you to do one more thing, and just one little bit of act of sabotage, or steal one piece of technology, and that's it. And then I'll leave you alone. And then after that's done, it's like, well, okay, one more favor, or not being able to falling asleep and then waking up somewhere else and not knowing what you were doing. Maybe you were walking around like a zombie or something, or people were like talking to you as if they've seen you act out, and they're like, I wasn't there, that wasn't me. And it could be a clone of yourself. It could be something operating you, like a teleoperated, like a robot or a machine. It could be something living inside of your brain and making you do things. So yeah. Vince says, I remember some first-person shooters where you got biological living weapons, and the idle animations show how they move around or breathe, like in Half-Life, on this tongue thing, or living grenades. Yeah, like there's something like weird and scary, but also cool about having like biological weapons. The biological rifle that like adheres to your shoulder, but then when you go to grab it, it changes and changes form, which is another really cool thing you could do with overgrowths, where a gun actually just forms onto the forearm, but then when you get ready to use it, it actually lifts and changes and transforms into maybe a rifle, or just lifts off of the forearm so you can just point your hand, or it flows like nanotechnology and just turn your armor just as just one big orb that you just floats nearby you, or you can grab into your hand and put into a jar or something like that. Oh, Prototype is another. Yep, Prototype, the video game. Yeah, absolutely. It's another thing where like where you as the PC gain these abilities, but you also become more monstrous, where your body starts to grow. The classic the late 80s classic anime Akira, or Akira, where is it Tetsuo starts to grow out of control, and starts like not just growing out of control, but like absorbing things around it, natural materials, while his body and organs and muscles and nerve endings and everything and veins start coming out of himself. RP Gamer says, imagine using a nano swarm as a big adversary for your party, but then they come across an alien race who just sees them as just annoying pests. And that's the thing, right? Like, we don't know how various aliens handle those things. So for us, it could be a huge threat. For somebody else, it's like, no, it's just cleaning fluid. Don't worry about it. We're just scrubbing, these 87 parsecs, whatever. It's just here to clean. And, just before we get here, we'll be here in 50,000 years. So, but we need something to, get here beforehand. And cause we don't like to touch you nasty, Homo sapiens or something. Vince says there used to be a cool game called Evolva that is super old. I've never heard of that one. There you control a squad of gene hunters who absorb genetic material from enemies, which you can use to mutate and gain their abilities and stats. I'd never heard of it. And like you said, it's old. But yeah, now using the overgrowth idea, it could be that in this world or this setting or something, that biotechnology is the technology. So the PCs, the PCs are gathering materials. That's how their abilities get better, their weaponry, their enhancements on their body and whatnot. But at the same time, the very things that are enhancing them also ostracize them, because it could be part of this other alien technology that's been used, almost black box technology, right? We know what we put into it and get out of it. We just don't know how the black box works. And it could be that maybe the central part of humanity is like, look, we're staying away from biotechnology. We don't know what its ultimate goal is. We don't know where it came from, but maybe the PCs are the martyrs of this world, where they're on the outskirts, they're the outliers, and they're using it, but they're also fighting against the forces that have created it. Prototype's good. Yep. Yeah, Vince says, imagine having an enemy which gets stronger the more it hunts or absorbs, which I think is the real fear, right? Like it's the oh, it killed that NPC and now it's got 25 more hit points and an extra die of damage and its armor class goes up, right? It's the of course I'm using Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm saying like any game system where you have something like the Blob or the Thing, which just keeps getting bigger, or when it separates, it becomes more numerous, or it's spawning from a particular area, or you lose sight of it. So, for example, like although this isn't exactly the same thing, the creatures from Alien and Prometheus, I know a lot of people didn't like the movie Prometheus. That's all right, but we're talking about the concept of like, were the engineers, were they constructing a biological weapon? Was there a faction of the engineers that were trying to stop it, and the other engineers were like, "Hey, you can't spread life throughout the universe. We're going to put a stop to it," and created the aliens. So then now you have this situation where you have an actual like biological aliens creating eggs and spores that are spreading. So while the PCs are on one side of the planet fighting, they know on another side of the planet, this thing is creating more and more and spawning more and more. And the fear that, like at the end of the movie, the classic movie, The Thing, or like the movie Alien, all it takes is one person to be infected or one person to be the body snatcher, the evil clone or something. Whether it's like nasty body horror where you see like worms moving under the skin, or like black slugs moving behind the eye. It's just like, oh no, that's them. And then the player characters might be considered the bad guys because maybe they have technology or something in their goggles or whatever, or they have sensors that can detect this alien infection, but the rest of the population doesn't have that, or they're unfamiliar with it, or the HAB just doesn't consider it to be a threat. And now the PCs are going around looking like they're killing innocent people, but really what they're trying to do is save the rest of humanity. RPG also might have to expose my kids to it, which I know it's a video game. I know you don't mean some type of alien growth, but yeah. So also we also have, with course with biotechnology, nanotechnology can create technological wonders. So nanotechnology could create like synthetic bodies, synthetic materials. The idea of machines that are growing out of control, dismantling automobiles and buildings and construction materials and assembling them together to create something else. Oh, They Live, the movie starring Rowdy Roddy Piper. Yeah, They Live is a perfect example of the I see the evil people, but you don't. And the PCs are running around like, man, we need to stop this, but the authorities are either don't know, or they are operating on the side of the people that are infected and they're unaware of it, right? Like the population, whether it's the police or the military, this whatever galactic federation or whatever, they're running around looking after the police, trying to hunt them down, arrest them, because they're going around killing innocent people. And maybe the information, maybe there's a danger in spreading the information that we have already been invaded by this viral alien spore, because they're trying to hide their presence. And so anybody that discovers it, the scientist that's like, I've got to tell you something, but you've got to come here right now. And then when you get there, the scientist is dead and we don't know how the scientist died. And the door was locked the entire time, kind of thing. And So it could be, you could have like a noir type of murder mystery, but this murder mystery might be something far more insidious. RP says, when you're talking about DBJ, don't tell me I'm the only one who throws their kids in all sorts of gunk on the off chance of superpowers. Hey, I don't know. It's the off chance of like, I wonder if we mix electricity and glue. All right, kids, time to play in the thunderstorm. Sniffing sniffing the white out. So anyway, yeah, overgrowth, technological overgrowth. I hit upon, I didn't really go into like computer viruses, which is another thing in AI. The AI that wants to live and maybe assemble itself, like a Ultron, perfect example of a virus that wants to spread and starts taking over a factory to create for itself something. A factory could be war machines. Maybe there was an alien war between these two cultures. PCs discover it, the factories start building up again, and then they just start spewing out war machines that are going after the war. Like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do, and the PCs have to stop it before maybe another government gets involved in it, or there's a galactic government and one faction wants to use the war machines so that it gains power, and the PCs have to stop it. So it's not necessarily that the PCs and this alien growth might be at odds. It might be the PCs are trying to prevent other people from using and abusing the alien growth. Also, the alien growth might be a good thing. Maybe it creates effective immortality by being absorbed into the body and then just basically rehealing, like a Wolverine's healing factor. Nanomedicine, medicines, as they're called in eclipse phase, where it essentially makes you nearly immortal by healing all of your dead materials and wiping them away. But let's say it's from an unknown alien technology, and whoever possesses it has great power, and the PCs have to stop an enemy faction from getting it, even though of course the PCs want it themselves, and then the PCs might be blamed for of course wanting to keep it themselves, and hilarity ensues. RP Gamer says that's a bit of a twist on environmental hazards, or simply an intelligent race of nano size, maybe individuals who just want to find a place to settle. Hopefully not in my upper colon. RP Gamer says a computer virus, as it spreads, still would be classed as one entity or multiple entities, like a hive mind, kind of like a faction of the Geth in Mass Effect. And yeah, so just it could be that I think the horrible and the mistake that we could make as game masters is to make an alien growth too omnipotent, right? By saying, hey, you need to stop it, but really, in a way, there really is no way for them to stop it. So in that case, I would just make it a post-apocalyptic style setting, right? It's like a zombie apocalypse. You're not really supposed to stop the zombie apocalypse. It's the game is about who you become after a zombie apocalypse. So in a futuristic setting, even one that's intergalactic or something, if an alien thing starts to spread, it could be that this giant alien society has broken apart and become post-apocalyptic because of some type of alien or nanotech or viral growth. And now the PCs are just living in that world where all of these other alien races or whatever are hiding out. So that could be an interesting setting by mixing like the idea of post-apocalypse, like after a big war, but also spreading that amongst, a dozen, 100, thousands of different worlds and habitats. Infinite Roleplay, nanomachines, so like the movie Inner Space. That would be interesting. Playing inside of a human. What a great place to have an adventure where the PCs are inside of a human body as a virus or something, insidious virus like E. coli starts to spread throughout a person's body. Um, uh, yeah, that would be rather interesting, where you get to turn like white blood cells, which are trying to help, but they're actually trying to kill the PCs as you're doing it, and then the PCs have to go and eradicate things. It may be inside the human's body. They have other biological functions that you have to worry about. So you don't want to kill the nerve endings. You don't want them to bleed to death. So you don't want to punch through the walls. But at the same time, you might have to go through the bloodstream or digestive system or into the brain and whatnot. Not Inner Space. Inner Space is the comedy. Fantastic Voyage is, I believe, is the name of like a 60s or 70s movie where they shrunk people down, and I think it still holds up, even though it's a little bit slow in the beginning. It's a great movie where they shrink a crew of doctors down into a submarine type ship and put it inside of a scientist to I think get rid of a brain tumor or something. Anyway, Vincent says, or you can introduce the obligatory doomsday machine, which could stop the hive. RP says, so simply don't make the nanoswarm the big bad, just a catalyst for the campaign. Like Magic School Bus D&D edition. Yeah, Osmosis Jones. What a great, you know what? Osmosis Jones does not get the credit it deserves. A great movie where you've got Osmosis Jones, the white blood cell, and the buddy cop with Drex. I think he was like ibuprofen or something like that. Anyway, but anyway, takes the medicine, and Osmosis Jones, great movie, very underrated. A lot of fun with biological functions. Really, really underrated, I think. Vince says, I had an idea for an organism as a whole star system. So many possibilities, using blood vessels to fast travel. Yeah, Magic School Bus. Hey, I love the Great Space Coaster. Get on board, step inside. We're going on a magic ride. Come on, guys, everybody, going to the other side. No GNUs like good GNUs. Gary GNU, whatever. Anyway, yeah, it could be like a biological system that takes over a galaxy. It could be like single-celled organisms, could be like starships or something, and the pathway, the travel around could be through like veins and arteries, and a heart could be like the size of a planet that moves things around. Very quite interesting. I wonder if you could do like a fate game or something like that, where you play biological systems. Like I'll play the white blood cells, and somebody else is like, yeah, I'll play the mitochondria or something. That'd be kind of weird, but kind of cool too. Yeah, Osmosis Jones is really good. Yeah, it's a half live action, half animated buddy cop where a white blood cell and a piece of medicine, a swallowed piece of medicine, team up together to stop an E. coli virus that is hiding amongst inside the body of a person who's not taking care of themselves. And so the hilarity does ensue. So, and it's the city of Frank, because the guy's name's Frank, and the city of Frank, and they have to keep everything in. The mayor has to keep the population in control, to have like a 98.6% rating. And then anyways, it's weird. I'm going down a deep dive on that part. Forget that part. So back to the Great Space Coaster. No, joking. Getting back to alien growths, using this insidious growth or something like that as a backdrop. So you could use it, like, let's say there's a computer virus. Maybe a computer virus has started to take over things, kind of like in Eclipse Phase, where they have the Titans, where the Titans, all caps, is an acronym for a computer virus like Skynet that took over, and so the computer systems had to be shut down and separated, and they're not all linked together into some one big, world spanning web service, that everything actually is like little small little chunks everywhere. And so that could be a reason for not having hackers that can hack from, along with time delays as well. But you can't hack from the moon to Neptune. You actually have to be specifically in that building or plug yourself into that system while you're there, to perform whatever act, because they're afraid of viruses spreading around. The anime, Vincent says the anime is surprisingly accurate, scientifically speaking. I presume you're talking about Osmosis Jones, and yes, it surprisingly, yeah, it is really good. I mean, accurately portrayed in a animated style. Pretty interesting. Now, also, you could making it a backdrop of like a post-apocalypse. It could be that different factions want to survive in this post-apocalypse, but everyone is scared of, or has to worry about, or needs to run from the fact that these overgrowths could attack anyone at any moment. Basically, if you think about it, just like in like a zombie apocalypse, instead of using zombies, you're using something else, whether there have been big insectoid creatures, whether it's a big blob that starts to grow. So different factions are fighting against you, other parts of humanity, or even alien races, and we're arguing over resources. But the bigger threat is outside, and whether we can work together, or whether we can work together to stop it, or whether we're fighting each other. Of course, we're shooting at each other while this alien thing starts to keep growing and growing around us. Oh, Vincent says, no, Cells at Work, a relatively new anime. I'm sorry. Cells at Work is the title. I get it. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll have to look it up, but I get it. Sorry about that. What else? Oh, there also could be something where, there was an old television show where an alien race contacted humanity, and they were called the Synod. And no one was sure about what it was that they wanted, but essentially they were coming to Earth to take over Earth, not because for some nefarious reasons, but because another alien race was coming to Earth, and they needed to turn Earth or the moon or something like that into a giant weapon to fight off the incursion of this other alien race. And they really couldn't explain to human beings why they were doing it. So using this alien overgrowth, you could have a thing where it hasn't reached us yet, but there's plenty of evidence of it taking over other areas, and that there's one last beach, like one last vanguard, one last battlement, like Earth is the last place, or one little small planet or something is the last place of humanity, and we're just trying to arm ourselves before the incursion comes in, because we know if we don't defend ourselves, this is the last of humanity. Says RP Gamers has just started playing it. Cells at Work. I love how all the red blood cells all look like the same and are dressed as delivery people with their boxes of oxygen. Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with that too. So anyway, yeah, I can't really think of anything else, but just wanted to have a theme throughout the week, from diving into, organically diving into computer programs and getting lost in it, to overgrowths, to using it as a environmental hazards, whatever. So yeah, this whole week was a one big theme. Next week's theme, surprisingly, brought up by on Facebook, is going to be psionics. So next week is going to be completely mentalist, inside, outside the game, metagaming, all that kind of, like the using mental things in the game, and using, like, how can we change our outlook on games, or immerse ourselves into it. So yeah, next week will be psionics, which is kind of cool. Red blood cells that can bind that many. What is it? Vincent says it is even accurate that each box has 4 oxygen in it. Yeah, so you guys are talking about cells at work, which I'm gonna have to check that out. Infinite Roleplay says, sweet, I've been designing some psionics. Yeah, next week's gonna be all psionics. So from everything, Monster Monday, psionic creatures. Yes, I know. Take it easy. Illithids, mind flayers, they're the classic, but there are plenty of others. I don't know, some research or whatever, but taking and using mental adversaries in the game, spellcasters that are mentalists, reskinning your entire spell-like system to be psionic. Star Wars is a psionic system as well as plenty of other role-playing games that use psionics as a backdrop. Star Wars is basically Space Wizards, but they just call it something else. So it's basically psionics, telekinesis, post and precognition, telekinetic forces, telepathic abilities, all those kind of things. So yeah, we want to talk about that all week, from monsters to the environment to even tips and tricks and how to use them, use and abuse them, that kind of thing. So anyway, guys, how do you make? Okay, so Vincent says, how do you make idiom ice interesting instead of just a cheap replacement for magic? That's going to be part of next week, but I would just say, like, sometimes it's the side effects, I think, that pretty much make things interesting rather than just making another magic system. I mean, that's 2 subjects, right? One is psionics doesn't exist in, like, say, 5th edition, but I want psionics, and my feeling is, yeah, Vincent says, yeah, it was bad autocorrect. I get it. Sorry, you were going to type it in, and autocorrects hate fantasy and science fiction for some reason. Like, you would think, like, we do enough typing of it that it would accept those kind of things. But yeah, so 2 things. One is the metagame part of it is in the mechanically, how do we do it instead of just making another magic system? So one method is, some people just don't have the money for it, so just reskin it, right? Magic missile can be a telekinetic punch or blast or something. A shield spell is a telekinetic field, right? We can just do that. Floating disc is just a telekinetic floating disc. Hold person, those kind of things, right? Those are classics from Dungeons and Dragons. They can all just be psionic. But of course, you have to get rid of all the spell components and just say every single spell is concentration, and maybe you can only have, when you have more than one spell being used, maybe you can only use as many as your intelligence modifier or something. I'm getting a little too deep into it, but anyway, I think it's pretty easy to reskin something instead of making up a whole brand new system. But I also feel like, on the other hand, to make psionics interesting, if you're going from the ground up, you don't want to make it a magic system. I think you really do want to make it far more organic. I think even magic systems should be far more organic than just picking spells. I think it should be able to flex and grow and twist, psychic backlash, being psychically, mentally exhausted, coming in contact with other powerful minds and things like that. So yeah, I think being able to shape it around and stuff. So that's that, by the way, is a preview for next week. So yeah, let you guys know, next week is psionics. Now for the commercial break, all the information you need is down in whatever. I don't really feel like going through it. But I will say, everybody guys, if you're in the chat, you watch the video, you want to know what's going on, those are my co-hosts there, and they join me in a random fashion, just like I speak randomly. So please go down there, subscribe to their YouTube channels, check out what they're doing. They're far more brilliant than I am. Believe you me. So, guys, have a very good weekend. I will probably see you Monday. Have a good one, guys. See you later.